Hey, hello everybody. Sorry about this. This is a little bit of a dub over for this episode of Discussing Tabletop. I don't know exactly when I'm going to throw this in with the interview here. It might be right at the start of the show, depending on how long it takes, or it might be a little bit into where we were talking about stuff, where I was talking with Bobby, Robert, of Almost a Game, and Brenda. Yes, unfortunately, Joe was not with me today. He had injured his back. We found that out towards the end of the show, which was revealed, and he was unable to eat, highly medicated, resting, didn't get up, that kind of thing. Anyway, so yes, so the show will be cut short if you haven't noticed that there, and I was talking with these two folks from the small independent game creation company, Almost a Game. My first question, of course, was where was the origin of Almost a Game? And I found out from Bobby that Almost a Game came in because he was into just designing some small board games on his own, and he wanted to see if he could make it to the public. So he put together some things, he figured out what he wanted to do, and he started the company to get it out to the public, as I was saying there. He himself had been in some design and graphic design and things like that, art design. He does all the art for all of his games, and was doing a bit of games on his own, and eventually then made the company. We did talk about a little bit about their two games, Wicked Apples, which is the game they currently have out, how I had a chance to test it out at PAX Unplugged 2017 when I went to there. If you are a longtime listener of the show, you might know about that. Eventually then, I did buy it when I got to PAX, or PAX South, that was. PAX Unplugged is when I purchased a copy of Wicked Apples. So it was a very fun game. I enjoyed it a lot. It's a game where it's about taking items and a bit of luck, a bit of taking. The object is to be the last person standing, or everybody dies, because all these apples that you have can just kill people, and you play apples and things like that. And it's there's always that wicked apple which kills everyone. Yep, sorry, just taking a quick drink there, as I'm going to talk about that. They also talked to us about Space Chase, which Space Chase is a game that is described as kind of a cooperative Suro, they described it as. So if you're not familiar with Suro, it's a tile-laying game where you lay tiles down and maneuver your character around and keep it on the board longest. And that's a game that people play against each other. Last person on the board wins. Now, for them, it's a cooperative game, meaning that everybody is taking turns playing tiles in order to avoid death, basically, as a group. As there's all kinds of problems in space, and you're getting a chase, space chase, hence the name, and that's the origin of that end of things. Now, I did find out that, Brenda, she was introduced to it. She's the marketing side of thing. Bobby being the design and artist. Brenda being, the marketing kind of person, was brought in because her and Bobby had done some things together in the past, and they were good friends. And so he brought her in to help out with this projects and get everything right and get onto the marketing side of everything. And help out set up everything as they're working on it. Now, the question that I brought into them, where we're going to be continuing from the end here, is I was talking to them about producing things. If they would do something like a Kickstarter or not, and from what I was seeing, they were going to try to avoid Kickstarter because it's a lot of promises. Usually it might require larger runs, a lot of financing and things like that they're not getting into, and a lot of the expansions for things like if you do get a very successful Kickstarter and needing that. And they're going in, they've aimed for smaller print runs of whatever of their games, and aim for that to be the source of it. And Brenda will describe that better when we get into that part of it. I also did talk about Robert about the fact that he got into board games during the board game resurgence of the early 2000s, which has been still going very strong, and that was his source of wanting then to, with his design background, of wanting to design some of his own games. That was some of his reasoning that eventually led him to forming the company Almost a Game. Now, unfortunately, I can only review the information that I got to memory, and, a simple interview does not give me the full information. So, this little vignette of stuff over the video with them is going to be ending shortly, and we're going to go back into the full interview. Unfortunate technical issues, and I hope to have them on again to maybe talk a little bit more about this again in the future on the show. We can kind of review the information that we talked about and we missed previously. So thanks of you who are listening to this now and enjoying this little vignette of me describing what should have been said here if we did not have the audio issues that we did have. And now we can resume with the interview already in progress.
You can take it.
All right. So what we've tried to do is be more of a boutique indie game company where we're putting out small runs of games, but with high quality. In the industry, there are not a lot of profit margins. They're not really high because you're doing such a physical product. So for a lot of people, what they don't see behind the scenes is when you run a Kickstarter, a lot of these people are going to conventions a year. We've heard anywhere from like 5 to 15 where you're outlaying that money just to get the word out, and then running a Kickstarter, and a lot of that money is to recoup what you've gotten or to do a bigger print run, but there's not really a lot in profit that's coming either, and a lot of that is just a lot of additional hard work and strain and focused on a Kickstarter and not always the product. So for us, we get to do smaller runs and build up an audience and make sure that what we're putting out is, a quality that we really appreciate, knowing that profit margins in this industry are not really, are somewhat non-existent. And then hopefully, putting out a few games and being able to, see some meager profits as we go.
Okay. Oh, sorry, there's a little audio issue, so I have to hope that, the first half of that... I think I fixed the audio issue because there's someone in chat now, but I'm hoping that didn't mess up the first half of the interview. Oh, I'll have to check my recording later on. Oh my god. Oh boy, it's one of those days. Oh boy. Everything that can go wrong. It's it's going to be an excuse to maybe have you on again sometime. All right. So those of you in chat, if you're new here, we have been talking with Bobby and Brenda of Almost a Game about their stuff right now. All right. So I get that you're going for those smaller runs and stuff, and I guess because you are the artist, you don't have as much trouble, artist and designer. That does help you with that. You don't have to outsource to a lot of other people too. Do you manage everything then on your own when it comes to design, or do you have either go-to people or other people that you can get for maybe advice or help if you need it or anything like that?
I have some a group of designers, local designers that I can talk to and that we test stuff with and stuff like that. Yeah, and it is tough. I did have a larger design group that I was working with earlier when I started doing this, and some of them have kind of disbanded. But I do have people that I've kept in touch with that that sort of thing.
Okay. So now here's an interesting process because I have a question, because just when it comes to getting the bugs out, playtesting and stuff, do you use your convention travels for that? Do you use your groups that you have for that? What do you go about for doing that?
Anyone and everyone. So we do playtests at conventions to see how people receive it, because if we have 100 people at a convention that play through a game, and 50 of them aren't having fun, then that's not a good game. That we need to fix them. But also, yeah, like and local playtest groups and that sort of thing. Like, just the more I can playtest it, the better. The more I can refine it. Definitely.
Yeah. And just having different groups too. A lot of times, if you're doing it at a game convention, you're having people who love to play games, and if you're trying to reach people who don't always play games or are on the very casual side of the fence, then you have to make sure that you're playtesting with those folks too, who aren't used to sitting down and reading through a 20-page rule book.
Yeah. I think that holds true for the games we design. Like, we try and make things interesting for people who really like to play games, but also easy enough to get into that people who don't always play games can feel comfortable learning the game and jumping in. Wicked Apples, I think, is a good example of that. That is being easy to learn, but having deeper rules for people who really want to, get into the psychology of trading the apples with people.
Yeah. All right. So here's a question that I kind of come about. Like, the tabletop industry has certainly expanded a lot in the last couple of years, like probably last decade. Is there any kind of like tabletop products that you want to focus on, or is there some things that like maybe you have a pipe dream of trying out doing? Because like there's like you've certainly done it. You've got a card game, and you've got like with Space Chase, it's probably more closer to like I would say, since you're describing a Sura, that's more like a tile laying game, with strategy, of course. But there's like a large variety, dice games, various other like more like semi or collectible card games, or even like full-on RPGs and stuff too, which also can take wide varieties into them, from board game RPGs to full-on pen and paper.
Yeah. Well, I think any designer will tell you, like, even though we're just putting out 2 games currently, and then we'll move on to more, like, that I have 10 or 12 games that I've designed, that I've prototyped, that I've played with, that just I haven't pushed forward all the way yet. There's always coming up with new ideas and designs and designs. I think a dice game would definitely be in our future, because Brenda loves dice games, and if I don't make one eventually, like,
that's gonna be the one
I may lose
together.
my marketing maven.
No,
so.
That's the one we're gonna do together. What are you talking about? I love them so much. I love them.
I can enjoy a good dice game too, so I can't argue with that.
Yeah. But no, actually, like some of the stuff I've been playing with in the past year also is like looking at games like kind of more RPG-ish type of games, like Gloomhaven. I think has been like a very interesting but very large and thick game, and so I've been looking at like how would that look as almost a game type of game, like how would that scale down? How would that be easier to learn or less less intimidating, less time intensive? Like ideas like that. So yeah, I definitely have dice and more like RPG and games that have like carryover besides just being a single game, that have kind of like. But then again, I also know that people love us for Wicked Apples and small games, so like I have a lot of small games that I've.
Yeah, but we can do a small. I want to do a small RPG. So I love the fact that we're in this resurgence of RPG, with Stranger Things, Dungeons and Dragons, and with Acquisitions Inc. and all of these other really, cool things. I'm really excited that people are becoming more aware, and a small, lightweight RPG that's not intimidating would be so nice.
Oh no, I could see that, like something that you could play in like.
The audio paused, but that was so good.
Oh. Yeah, I'm still hitting audio at least for a little pause there. Like when you say small things, that like makes me think to like. I like occasionally playing Fiasco, which is like your light RPG. It's still a long game to play. So if there's something like that could be light, that's a market that doesn't exist, definitely, So maybe someday I would be down for help and play test that kind of thing.
That's it. I'm writing you down right now.
Okay. So, let's see here. I've hit up most of my questions. See, that's why I like having Joe around, because if I'm forgetting a question, he's helpful for me. So what's on the docket for the upcoming conventions? How about we'll go with that one?
Let's see. I know coming up soon we have Boston Fig we're going to be at again, and then PAX Unplugged. And I think possibly next year we're looking at maybe Gen Con.
Maybe. Oh, maybe. That's right. Yeah. Maybe. We'll see. We'll see what's going on there.
That's
or possibly Origins.
Those are both kind of like on the maybes fence for me, because like my 2 years ago one attempt at traveling to PAX South was very hard, and then going to traveling again, it's just like I would love to go to these places, but it's just arranging everything. So I can understand that.
Yeah, but actually, yeah. I mean, PAX South was a lot of fun for us. Like, I'd love to go back there again. It's just the hard, especially if you're bringing so many games there.
Yeah, I can understand that.
And same with PAX
West.
West.
Yeah.
Is that what they're calling it now?
West.
PAX West. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, definitely have to do some arranging to get there, though.
Yeah. No. Like, being East Coast, it's easier to travel to East Coast. I could drive to places in the East Coast. You know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So. All right.
But yeah. Definitely those.
Okay. So I guess that's kind of like what you're working on in the future. Do you have a kind of date set for Space Chase, or is it still like, in that period where you're figuring out an actual release date kind of thing?
I think we're still figuring out the actual release date. I think the hope is to have it done before PAX Unplugged. But it's really, after we got back from PAX Unplugged this past year, we started looking into manufacturing stuff and found that we could cut the cost by quite a bit by components, or changing what some of the components are and stuff like that. So we've been doing that to try and cut down the cost to make it, more friendly to consumers, and then playtesting those changes. And I think it's actually improved the game.
Mm-hmm.
Limitations to work within, we seem to yield better results. But
yeah,
like 6 months ago, he's a liar. Don't listen to this man. Don't listen to him. He's like, I don't want to be constrained by manufacturing concerns, and now it's all different. I'm just teasing. You gotta have balance.
Because there were really good changes.
You gotta have balance.
So that actually brings up a couple of interesting points that I can kind of bring up. How is it for getting into the manufacturing side? Do you? I know there's a few local companies, well, U.S.-based companies that can do things, but after that it has to be either Europe or China. It seems. Have you had like a lot of success? Do you like have a specific company that you kind of have been working with, or do you kind of like fish around when it comes to that kind of thing?
I have some places over here in the U.S. For doing the actual print runs. The places overseas are just generally less expensive and have more options and a lot of times better quality. So, like, in terms of doing like the actual print runs of games, it has to be overseas, really.
Well, also too, a lot of the ones who claim that they're the U.S. will also still ship off to an overseas for the actual manufacturing run. So you have to make sure that you're doing your research. You're using a U.S.-based company, and then they're doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Interesting. See, that's definitely information that I wasn't aware of, that I like hearing about. There's always those little things. Let's see here. And then the other question I had kind of related to costs, because that's something like whenever I see something kind of a board game, I always kind of break down if I feel like a cost is within an appropriate kind of scale, in my brain. Do you actually have an idea of when you're building it for a cost that you want, or do you kind of base it off of like how well you can do with producing it, and then kind of estimate a decent, an appropriate cost from that?
That's a good question.
I mean, I usually have an idea of like what I want it to cost beforehand, but until you start getting into the manufacturing of it, how big of a box do you need? How many pieces can you cut down those pieces? Like, it really comes down to you make a spreadsheet, you see how much everything costs, and then you see where you can go from there. So as much as I say I know how much it's going to cost beforehand, I feel like I really need to.
Well, and I think that's where I agree with you, that when you're making a game, like, throw all the ideas out there.
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't worry about if this is going to be a $90 game like Moonquake Escape. Like, just throw all of your, shout out to Jeff. About, like, put out all of your crazy ideas, and if they work, then start to figure out what the manufacturing costs are, because there are so many options that you can work with. Thickness of tiles, if you are dead set on tiles, like card quality, box quality, there's so many moving parts, but make the game you want first. What it's going to cost. See, like, okay, well, in playtesting, did I really need this, or can I, sacrifice here? But don't start with cost first. That's probably what the big companies do. But that's definitely not. And Bobby would shoot me if I was like, I need a $20 game. Can you work on it right now?
Yeah.
Could you please? Yeah, no, I don't think that would work.
How has it been for the parts of the company life that maybe that you aren't as, or originally was as good at? How have you adapted that? Because that comes into, like, you mentioned cost. That's budgeting. That's a problem that, like, I've talked with a few other independent game people, and it's like they have had trouble getting into that. How was your success at that, and getting into that and other parts that maybe you weren't trained at, to say?
So I think I was doing a lot of like budgeting and the planning and that sort of thing, and really budgeting or planning that much. It was really just like, this is a fun thing that I'm doing. I'm just gonna kind of go with it. But then the next year, really, like, I started to really plan out of, here's how much the games are going to cost for the year. Here's how much the conventions are going to cost, all the estimates, and then getting the real data. And really, like, it was a trial by fire, I'd say. But that's kind of what everything is for the pieces that you don't when you jump into it.
Yeah, so especially with budgeting, I think one of the interesting things for us is, how much are you okay with losing? Like, how much are you okay with putting in and not seeing anything back? And I think when we decided to print Wicked Apples, that first run, it was, how much money can we throw at this? And if it doesn't sell, like, we're okay with. Like, we gave it a try, and everyone hated it, and we lost all the money we put into it. And then that's how we determined, how many to print. And I think that's kind of been part of the budget going forward too, is, not thinking we're going to become millionaires. It's like, but how to break even, how to maybe make a little, how to keep going. And so that it has been a really big trial by fire.
Yeah. That's understandable. Do you see, like, the company reaching a point where maybe that would be like something big? Do you want to push towards that, or you just want to kind of keep at the level you're at now and just kind of fill the design itch, so to say, and like share it with people?
Well, so I think we definitely like to sell more games. Like,
what? Why are you looking at me like this is a question?
Like,
would we like to sell more games?
I mean, like,
so yeah. So I mean, it definitely is. It's a passion project. Like, it's it definitely is for scratching that itch, for having fun with a best friend, and like, you know, that sort of thing. But like, yeah, would it ever turn? Are we ever going to be a giant company? But do we want to be like to sell a lot more games, to reach a lot more people?
Yeah.
Definitely. So
is our goal to have like 5, you know, at least 5, at least 10, you know, games out under our name? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to share them with more people? Absolutely. But we want to do it in a way that
Yeah.
Which is really important. You know, we know a lot of people who are just, this is what they're doing, you know, day in, day out in their free time every weekend, and we've decided that wasn't for us. So I think we'd like to be a little bit bigger. Actually, I know we'd be a little bit bigger because we've talked about this. Shade. But not, I don't think that we ever expected we're going to be a giant game company. But if we are, then you can say you knew us when.
That's true. That's true. So
yeah, I think the biggest thing is just avoiding burnout. Like, weekend would definitely burn us out.
Oh yeah.
But doing this to the point where it's enjoyable is
okay. So like, that brings up an interesting question of like how much time does it take you in a process of building a game? Because, you know, you're devoting the, I guess, as you're saying it, like the amount of time that doesn't burn you out on it, you know. So how, like, you know, does that? I'm assuming that does bring out the design process, because those people that are full time can just really chug things out really closely. So, about how long does it give you for game development, do you think? At least, like, the core basics of a game, you know, getting to that point in time where you can start playtesting it, you know, getting all the bugs out. Okay.
Yeah. I'd say it's, well, depending on the game, maybe a month or two. Like, usually I have an idea, and it's usually not.
It's a good place to start.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, play this non-playable idea.
But it's making the cards and seeing if the gameplay works, and then iterating on that. So, you know, say about a month to get like a working prototype copy. To really nail it down and make sure that everything's working. Year, I don't know. It really is tough to judge, because like Space Chase I made about 6 years ago. Worked on it off and on depending on like what I was doing. Wicked Apples came together in about, you know, 4 to 6 months. So it's,
say, like, looking at like how many hours a week, like if we're talking about burnout, right? Like that might be a better way to think about it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like if you were, right? So if you were on Wicked Apples, how much time were you dedicating each week during that 4 to 6 months?
I'd say maybe 10 to 15 hours a week.
Okay, so like a part-time job.
Like a part-time job,
Like a solid part-time job.
A solid part-time job. Okay. Now, here's an interesting question, because you are the artist. How long does it take you to get all the art together when you're working on those kind of things? Like, how do you... You know, I know a couple artist people, and they have their unique way of doing things, you know, so I'm always thinking of, like, you are designer and artist. So, I mean, you fill two very big roles.
To the best of what I think you said.
We are getting a little breakup here, definitely. Like the connections. I'm gonna try something here. Give me a second. It might help. Oh, hopefully that'll help. At least temporarily, it'll help. Hopefully.
Yeah. So I've actually found that when I got into this as kind of like way to do art, but also to, you know, because I wanted that the gameplay and the mechanics process has actually taken over a lot of my time. Like getting a game to the point where I actually need to do finished artwork for it has become something that very often. So like I spend a lot of time doing mechanics, and I spend a lot of time doing graphic design, just before I even get to do any artwork. So the artwork doesn't, for like Wicked Apples, it took me like maybe 30 or 40 hours to do all the artwork for it. Like doing the card layout, making sure everything fit, like all that kind of stuff probably took me a lot longer. But actually like drawing out the apples and designing them and that sort of thing was probably 30 to 40 hours. It wasn't too bad.
Okay. Do you like do you feel like you have your own style, or you just kind of have like an idea of a style for every art design for a game you're going to do, kind of thing, you know?
I think I try and style it towards the game, but I also know that I have certain things that I like to do. I tend to gravitate towards more contrasted images, stuff that have like very thick, dark black lines and then bright pops of color. I like to use a lot of watercolor backgrounds, and then like kind of sculpt over them for my images. So it's in Wicked Apples that has a lot of like watercolor backgrounds for the apple and a lot of the other images. Space Chase, all the different layers and tiles, those are all different watercolor backgrounds as well. So I do have a style I tend to go to, but I try and sculpt the design of it towards the specific game.
Okay. Okay, and then I think I've got one last question. Because do you try to like put yourself into the playtesting a lot, or do you try to like at least take a step back? Because I know if you play something too much, you can get a little too much on it, you know? So that's the kind of question I got for you guys there with that one.
Yeah, it could definitely I'm probably the most knowledgeable person of Space Chase, and I know that can also lead to some issues because I know the tile count for each thing. I know a lot of the best moves at any given time because I know what's left in the bag or what could happen or what could not happen. And yeah, stepping out and just letting other people make the decisions, to see what decisions they make, to see if they notice the patterns, or find the strategies that I know are there is helpful in something that needs to happen. Yeah, okay. There's sometimes when I'm playing games, because I played them so much, like some parts that I think are obvious moves are not obvious to people who are playing it for the first time or even the fifth time, and it's, I think, up to me as a designer to recognize that and to bring out those mechanics to people better if I can. Shine a light on them.
And that's why it's actually helpful, although we haven't really done much with Space Chase. We did it with Wicked Apples to a certain extent, of having two different people who can play test the game. Because then you are taking away some of that bias, especially from a designer, right? You know exactly why you put it in there. And if somebody doesn't do it the right way, sometimes it's like, well, they just didn't do it the right way, or the conditions weren't set up versus there's something confusing about it. So we haven't really used the two-person advantage as much as we should, but it is something that has been helpful just for clarification or making changes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, got one final question. I just, got a suggestion from chat, because I almost missed that one. There is a third game on your site, False Queen. What information do you have on that one for people at this point in time?
Wait, first and foremost, good on you, chat person,
Yes.
checking it out. Awesome. I love you. Mwah.
Yes, thank you, Technoblaze, in chat. Thank you very much for...
Thanks for the detail.
I don't have Joe to, like, catch me on these things again.
Yeah, so False Queen was slated to possibly be our second game, and it won... What was the...
That was the audience choice one.
No, it wasn't. It was the other one. It won an award at the Boston Fig, but it was still going...
Wait, they're over there.
Yeah,
I don't know what it says. All right, never mind.
It was still going through some, like, design changes, balances, that sort of thing. And it got to the point where it still needs some design changes before we bring it out. Like, I think it's a fun game. It's a good game, but it wasn't quite there. We wanted to get something out sooner than later. We kind of shifted focus over to Space Chase as a game that had been tested more, but also seemed like it needed less changes before it was brought to market. So False Queen is an award-winning game, essentially.
Well,
it definitely needs a little more time in the oven, I think.
Okay. Good news I heard from Joe.
hi, Joe.
He hurt himself and took way too many meds, and that's why he was asleep. Apparently he threw out his back.
I was gonna say, because that could be interesting.
I don't want him sitting up if he threw out his back, because he'd have to prop himself up at a computer. I think he's just been lying down and medicated all day since yesterday.
Oh,
jeez.
sorry, Joe.
Yeah, his
No
message
better,
was his message earlier was just like I'm awake, and I didn't hear anything back from him. So I think he was in a fugue state when he messaged me back. Oh God. Yeah, I'll have to let him know it's okay. No, not to stress himself if he's gonna try to like walk around with a really awful back. Oh God. Okay. I think I've hit on all the questions I can think of then, for hitting you guys up then. Is there anything else you guys want to talk about, shout out then, before I let you go off into the ether?
Ooh, what should we shout out to?
If you are interested in hearing about Space Chase when it comes out, box it. If you go to our website, we have a newsletter that you can sign up for, and that's a good way for us. We don't send out stuff very often. It's really just a way for us to let people know when new games are coming out, or
we're going to be somewhere.
Although that's just on our website. We don't usually broadcast that.
That's true.
But
we're pretty easygoing on the email.
Yeah, so if you are interested about hearing when our new games come out or where we are in the process, signing up for the newsletter is definitely a good way to do it.
And I'll make sure to link your website also when I throw things up on the YouTube side of things. So, I'll make sure to throw that out. I will definitely be by PAX Unplugged and say hi in December. And hopefully maybe when... maybe some point after Space Chase comes on, I can have you guys on again where you can like shout out your game definitely and promote it some more. That'd be great.
Yeah. That'd be great.
All right. Unfortunately, since Joe is injured and we finally heard from him, I think I'll be cutting the show with letting both of them go. So we'll just kind of cut it all today. So I'll be back next week. Hopefully Joe will be recovered by then enough to rejoin. All the topics for this week will be thrown to next week. So if you were looking at the docket, which I said earlier, that you can expect that there. Thanks again, Bobby, Brenda, for joining us. For joining me, at least. And Joe in spirit. Hopefully I'll be back tomorrow for some stuff. Check out my schedule down below, and again, thanks for joining me, and I'll be back next week for another episode. So I'm just gonna have us end here, and bye everyone.